There is something your grandmother knew that no one ever bothered to explain to you. Not because it was unimportant, but because in the world she came from, certain things were simply done, observed, practiced, honored, without the need for explanation. The explanation was in the doing. The wisdom was in the repetition. And the results were visible to anyone who paid attention over the course of a life. In Jewish households across Eastern Europe, across North Africa, across the ancient communities of Iraq and Yemen and Persia, there was a practice so common, so quietly universal, that women performed it the way they performed breathing, without fanfare, without announcement, as a simple and necessary act of care for the home and everyone in it. Every Sunday before the week truly began, before the noise and the rush and the demands of daily life returned in full force, a Jewish grandmother would take a small amount of coarse salt, never fine, always coarse, always unprocessed, and she would walk slowly around the bed where she slept, where her husband slept, where her children slept, sprinkling that salt in a deliberate, quiet, intentional circle. She would whisper something as she walked, sometimes a verse from Psalms, sometimes a prayer she had learned from her own mother, sometimes simply a name, the name of someone she loved and wanted to protect. And then she would go on with her day. And her household would be different because of it, not in ways that made the evening news. My grandmother gave me these secrets in her home 50 years ago. Every blessing, every protection, every tradition that makes a Jewish home truly sacred. Now I've gathered them all into one book just for you. Visit the link in the description or pinned comment and let me be your grandmother too. Not in ways that could be measured in a laboratory, but in the ways that matter most to people who actually live lives. The quality of the sleep, the peace of the home, the invisible protection that settled over the family like a warm and steady hand. Most people today have completely lost this, and the loss is greater than they realize. Because what that grandmother was doing was not folk magic. It was not superstition dressed up in tradition. It was the precise and intentional application of one of the oldest and most powerful principles in all of Kabbalistic wisdom. The principle that salt, in the spiritual architecture of creation, occupies a completely unique position. A position that no other substance on earth holds. And once you understand what that position is, once you understand why the rabbis called salt the covenant substance, why it appears at every sacred Jewish table, why it was used in the temple in Jerusalem in quantities that astonished even the ancient historians, once you understand all of this, you will never look at a box of salt the same way again. And you will understand exactly why your bedroom, the most private and energetically sensitive room in your entire home, needs its protection every single week. Stay with me, because this teaching goes deep, and by the time we are finished, you will have in your hands a practice that could change the quality of your sleep, the peace of your relationships, and the spiritual atmosphere of your home in ways that no amount of rearranging furniture or buying new curtains could ever accomplish. Let us begin where all true understanding begins, with the question of why. Why salt? Why the bed? Why Sunday? Each of these three elements carries its own layer of meaning, and when they are brought together, they create something that is greater than the sum of their parts. This is always how Kabbalistic practice works. The Zohar teaches that spiritual power is not additive, it is multiplicative. When the right elements combine in the right way with the right intention, the result is exponential. Salt appears in the Torah more than any other physical substance besides water. This is not coincidence. The rabbis teach that nothing in the Torah is accidental. Every repetition is an instruction. Every emphasis is a door. And salt is emphasized because it embodies something that the Creator wanted humanity to understand about the nature of preservation, of covenant, of the boundary between the sacred and the corrupt. In the book of Leviticus, the Creator commands specifically that every offering brought to the altar must be salted. Not some offerings, every offering. With all your offerings you shall offer salt. The rabbis of the Talmud spent considerable time discussing this commandment, not just its practical application, but its deeper meaning. And what they concluded, building on generations of understanding, was this: salt is the substance that prevents decay. Not merely physical decay, though it does that as well, and this is why salt was used to preserve food before refrigeration existed. Salt prevents spiritual decay. It holds things in their proper form. It maintains integrity against the forces that would dissolve, corrupt, and break down what is meant to stand. This is a staggering teaching when you sit with it, because it means that when a Jewish grandmother walked around her family's beds with salt every Sunday, she was not performing a quaint ethnic custom. She was applying the same principle that the priests in the temple applied to the sacred altar. She was saying with her actions, if not always with her words, "This space is an offering. These sleeping bodies are sacred. This rest is holy, and I am sealing it against corruption, against the forces of spiritual decay, against everything that would enter this room and disturb what belongs here." Now let us talk about what actually happens when we sleep, because this is the part that most people, even people who consider themselves spiritually aware, have never fully grasped. And without grasping it, the importance of protecting the sleep space cannot be fully understood. My grandmother gave me these secrets in her home 50 years ago. Every blessing, every protection, every tradition that makes a Jewish home truly sacred. Now I've gathered them all into one book just for you. Visit the link in the description or pinned comment and let me be your grandmother too. The Kabbalists teach, and this teaching is woven through the Zohar, through the writings of the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is perhaps the greatest Kabbalist who ever lived. They teach that during sleep, the soul does not simply rest. The soul travels. The body lies still. The breath becomes slow and deep. The conscious mind releases its grip on daily reality. And in that releasing, the soul ascends. It enters a state that the Kabbalists call the level of neshama consciousness, a higher level of awareness where the soul is reviewed, where it receives impressions, where it is either nourished or depleted, depending on the spiritual condition of the environment it left behind. This is why the tradition teaches that the quality of your sleep is directly connected to the spiritual state of your bedroom, not just the physical state, though cleanliness and order matter, but the energetic spiritual state. What happened in that room during the day? What emotions were expressed there? What words were spoken? What thoughts were held? What energies entered through dreams the night before? The bedroom is not simply a room where the body rests. It is the launch point for the nightly journey of the soul. And what the soul encounters when it returns in the morning, what it descends back into, shapes everything. The mood of the morning, the resilience of the day, The emotional landscape of the relationship between the two people who share that bed. A rabbi in Jerusalem, a man whose family had practiced these traditions for 11 generations, once described the unprotected bedroom this way. He said, imagine you have a beautiful garden, and every night while the gardener sleeps, the gate is left open. Not wide open, just slightly ajar. Not inviting visitors, just not secured. And over time, things wander in, small things at first. A weed here, a stone there. Debris from the wind. Nothing catastrophic. But every night a little more accumulates. And after weeks and months of this, the garden that was once flourishing begins to feel heavy. The flowers are still there, but they are not as bright. The soil is still good, but it is crowded with things that do not belong. The gardener wakes each morning feeling vaguely tired despite having slept, vaguely troubled despite having no clear source of trouble, and the answer is not more sleep. The answer is to close the gate. Salt closes the gate. When you sprinkle coarse salt around the bed on Sunday, walking the perimeter slowly, intentionally, beginning at the head of the bed and moving in a clockwise direction, which is the direction of blessing and increase in the Kabbalistic tradition, you are doing something that operates simultaneously on 3 levels. On the physical level, salt carries a negative ionic charge that literally affects the electromagnetic environment of the space. Science has documented this in relation to salt lamps and salt rooms. Environments rich in negative ions support deeper sleep, calmer nervous systems, and clearer breathing. This is not mysticism. This is chemistry. But the Kabbalists knew it centuries before chemistry had the language to describe it. On the energetic level, salt acts as what the tradition calls a mechitza, a boundary, a dividing line between one type of space and another. When you create a ring of salt around the sleeping space, you are creating a spiritual perimeter. You are defining the space and saying, what is inside this boundary belongs to rest, to peace, to the nourishment of souls. What is outside this boundary? The worries of the week, the lingering energies of difficult conversations, the spiritual debris that accumulates in any home where real human life is lived, stays outside. And on the intentional level, which the Kabbalists always considered the most powerful of all 3, you are bringing your conscious awareness to something that usually happens without awareness. Most people fall into bed without a single thought about what they are entering, what they are allowing into the space of their deepest vulnerability. The act of walking the perimeter, of holding the salt, of whispering a prayer or a blessing as you move. This act wakes something up in you. It reminds you that sleep is sacred, that rest is not passive, that the bedroom is a sanctuary, and sanctuaries require tending. Now, I want to tell you about a family in Thessaloniki, the great Jewish city of Greece, where for centuries one of the most vibrant Jewish communities in the world flourished. In this family, the Sunday salt ritual was practiced by every woman for as far back as anyone could remember. The great-grandmother had brought it from her mother, who had brought it from hers, and this family was known in their community for something unusual, not wealth, not fame, not exceptional talent, but for the quality of their sleep and the quality of their peace. Neighbors would comment on it. How is it that your children are never anxious? How is it that your husband comes home in the evening and his face relaxes the moment he walks through the door? How is it that even after loss, even after difficulty, There is always something steady in your household. The great-grandmother, when asked directly, would simply smile and say, "We keep the bed protected." She said it in Ladino, the old Spanish Jewish language that Sephardic Jews have spoken for 5 centuries, and the people who heard it would nod politely without really understanding, because they thought she was speaking metaphorically. She was not. And here is what I need you to understand about why Sunday specifically carries such importance for this practice. Sunday, in the Jewish understanding of time, is the first day, the day the Creator began the work of forming the world from chaos. The Midrash teaches that on the first day, light was separated from darkness. Order was established where there had been formlessness, and this quality, the quality of first day establishing, of setting the foundational order from which everything else will flow, this quality lives in Sunday the way sunlight lives in the morning. It is most concentrated then, most available. And spiritual practices performed on Sunday carry the resonance of that original act of ordering, of separation, of the establishment of sacred boundaries. When you salt the bed on Sunday, you are working with the grain of creation, not against it. You are participating in the ongoing act of establishing order in your most intimate space, in harmony with the rhythm that the Creator set into time itself. This is why Sunday and not another day. This is why the practice renews weekly, because the energies that accumulate in a sleeping space accumulate continuously, and what was cleared last Sunday has, by the following Sunday, collected again. Not because your home is dark or damaged, simply because your home is alive. Because real people live in it, love in it, worry in it, dream in it. Life leaves marks. The salt clearing is the weekly renewal, the spiritual equivalent of opening the windows and letting fresh air move through every room. Now let me give you the practice exactly, because intention without precision loses half its power, and this teaching deserves to be received completely. On Sunday morning, ideally before noon, while the first day energy is still strong, you take a small bowl. White ceramic is traditional. Fill it with coarse sea salt, not iodized table salt. The refinement process removes something from it, the rabbis would say, though they would have described it differently than a chemist would. Coarse sea salt, or Himalayan salt if you prefer. Hold the bowl for a moment before you begin. Take 3 slow breaths, and as you hold the bowl, speak aloud or whisper the intention of what you are doing. It does not need to be elaborate. Something like, "I consecrate this salt for the protection of this sleeping space. May all who rest here be covered by peace, by blessing, and by divine protection." If you know Hebrew, you might add the words shalom, bracha, shmirah, peace, blessing, protection. These 3 words together form what the tradition calls a triple seal, a spiritual lock that is significantly stronger than any single invocation. Then begin walking. Start at the head of the bed, at the top where the pillows rest, where the head lies during sleep, where the mind releases its daily grip and enters the vulnerable openness of dream. Move clockwise to the right side of the bed, then to the foot, then to the left side, then back to where you began. As you walk, let the salt fall from your fingers in a thin, continuous line, not a pile, a line, a perimeter, a seam of protection drawn in the physical world that extends simultaneously into the spiritual world. As you walk, speak the 91st Psalm, if you know it. This is the psalm that the rabbis called the Psalm of Protection. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, who rests in the shadow of the Almighty. It has been used for centuries as a protective prayer for the sleeping space. If you do not know it by heart, read it. If you do not have it memorized, print it and hold it as you walk. The words are not decoration. They are architecture. When you have completed the circle, stand still for a moment. Look at what you have created: a ring of salt, a boundary of covenant, a physical declaration that this space is under protection. Feel what the Kabbalists call hysteresis, the awakening of the spiritual senses that comes when intention aligns with action. That feeling is the confirmation that something real has happened, that the gate has been closed, that the garden is sealed for another week. You may leave the salt in place for the day, sweeping it up in the evening, or if your floor requires it, you may sweep immediately and trust that the intention has been set and the energetic imprint remains. The rabbis teach that a segula, a spiritual practice performed with pure intention, leaves its mark beyond the physical act. The salt is a tool. The intention is the power. The salt makes the intention visible, concrete, real in the world of matter. But it is the intention that the upper worlds receive. Now, here is something that most people who practice this overlook, and it is perhaps the most important element of all. The practice is not complete without addressing the person who sleeps in the bed, as well as the space itself. Because the Kabbalists understood that the sleeping body is not separate from the sleeping space. They are in conversation with each other. They affect each other. And so, in the original form of this practice, as it was transmitted through the generations, the grandmother would not only walk around the bed, she would also, before leaving the room, place her hand on the pillow, on each pillow, and speak a blessing over the person who would lay their head there. For a husband, may your rest restore everything that the week has taken from you. May you wake with clarity, with strength, and with the knowledge that you are loved and protected. For a child, may angels stand at the four corners of your bed. May your dreams be sweet. May nothing reach you here that does not come from the one who made you. For herself, may I receive in sleep what I could not receive in waking. May I be renewed. This is the element that was most easily lost as the practice passed through generations and the explanations fell away. Because without it, the salt circle protects the space, but does not speak directly to the soul that will inhabit it. With it, the practice becomes complete. Space and soul addressed together, the outer boundary set and the inner blessing spoken, the physical and the spiritual meeting, exactly where the tradition always intended them to meet. At the threshold of sleep, at the edge of the day's end, in the moment of sacred vulnerability, when a human being gives their body to rest and their soul to God. This is what abundance looks like when it operates in the most personal dimension of life. Not money in the bank, though that too comes when the spiritual household is in order, but the abundance of genuine rest, of dreams that nourish rather than disturb, of waking into a day that already feels possible, of a relationship between two people who share a bed where peace is the baseline rather than the exception. These are the riches that the Jewish grandmother was protecting when she walked the circle every Sunday morning. She was not keeping evil away in some dramatic or fearful sense. She was simply and profoundly keeping blessing in. Remember, abundance is your birthright. The Creator did not design human life to be lived in exhaustion, in spiritual depletion, in a home where the invisible forces are pulling against, rather than supporting the lives being lived there. The tools for correction have always existed. They were carried by the grandmothers. They were whispered over sleeping children. They were practiced in the quiet Sunday mornings of 10,000 homes that no one ever wrote about, that never appeared in any history book, but that produced generations of people who were, in the deepest sense of the word, held. You can begin this Sunday. You have everything you need: a bowl, some coarse salt, a few minutes of quiet before the day fills with its noise, a willingness to treat the space where you are most vulnerable as the sacred space it truly is. That is all it takes. That is everything it takes. If this teaching stirred something in you, something that recognized itself in these words even before your mind had finished processing them, share it with someone who needs it. A daughter who is not sleeping well, a friend whose home feels heavy, a mother who has forgotten what her own mother knew. The transmission continues every time one person turns to another and says, "There is something I want you to know." May your bed be a sanctuary. May your sleep be a gift. May you wake each morning into a day that is already blessed, in a home that is already protected, in a life that is already fully and completely yours to inhabit with joy. May peace surround you. May blessing fill every room. And may the wisdom of those who came before you, carried in their hands, in their salt, in their Sunday morning prayers, find its way back to you now when you need it most. Amen.